some response. Can I start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is unless you're going to interact, it's going to be very difficult for me to continue. So please do interact. And previously I was in KC, so I'm just a KMC faculty now moved out to Rivarur. Okay. So as you asked for, we are going to start with molecular biology. So I thought I'll just start with a case before going into the topic proper. Okay. So can I hear the case? I want a response. Volunteer, please.
A 19-year-old male patient, fourth birth order, born to non-consensuous couple, aged 45 and 49 years, was referred to the Department of Orthodontics with the chief complaint of spacing between teeth in the upper as well as the lower jaws. The patient also complained of missing teeth and desired replacement of the same. The patient was moderately built and had mild degree of mental retardation. He had most of the common dysmorphic features of Down syndrome.
Yeah, you proceed, ma'am.
Short palpebral fissures, epicanthic folds of the eyelid causing almond-shaped eyes, mongoloid slant, hypertelorism, depressed nasal bridge, and bilateral clinodactyly. The patient also presented with a short neck and abnormally shaped ears, small hands and feet, deep crease in the palm of the hand, single palmar fold known as simian crease, poor muscle tone, and white spots on the iris of the eye known as brushfield spots. The patient also presented with excessive space between large toe and second toe. Family history was non-significant. His medical history was unremarkable and he was not on any medication.
Okay, ma. So what is this, ma? What is the case that is presented to you?
It's a Down syndrome, I think so.
Okay, what is this Down syndrome? Any idea?
Down syndrome is
Trisomy of
trisomy.
21st.
Trisomy.
Inama? What is it?
Trisomy.
Trisomy?
Of 21st.
21st chromosome.
21st chromosome. Okay, so can you explain what is the trisomy of 21st chromosome? What do you mean by trisomy? Okay, how many chromosomes are there in the human cell?
23 pairs.
23 pairs. Okay. So what happens in this particular case in Down syndrome?
One chromosome is extra.
Yeah, you're right. Proceed. See, even if it's wrong, we are learning. So please comment.
There is an extra chromosome on 21st.
Okay, so the 21st chromosome
First
has
pair.
an addition, right? There's one more pair there. Okay, so these phases I just show you the picture before proceeding. See the patient face with the and the angle of the mouth descending. So here you can see the epicanthic fold. See your teeth, they are spaced both in the jaw and in the lower jaw spacing. Here you can see the white spots in the iris. These are the brush field spots. You can see the white spots which are visible in the iris. So this is a simian crease. You can well appreciate. You can see there's a single palmar crease which is called as a simian crease. And then you can see the spacing between the big toe and the second toe. There's an increased spacing. Okay. So these are all the features which you find in Down syndrome. This syndrome was particularly named So this disorder is because of an additional third chromosome in the chromosome 21. There is an additional one more chromosome which is added to the 21st chromosome. That's why you call it as trisomy 21. And regarding the incidence, it's supposed to be the commonest autosomal chromosomal anomaly. The incidence is 1 in 600 to 1,000 live births. And you find this is the same incidence in all races and economic groups. Okay, and this extra genetic material is supposed to cause the delay in child development, both mentally and physically. Okay, so having learned it is a chromosomal disorder, now let us go and see what is this chromosome. What is this?
Ma'am, it is a condensed form of chromatin fiber.
What is chromatin fiber? Very good. The answer is right. What is chromatin fiber?
It contains DNA molecule.
It contains DNA. Now, what is this DNA?
DNA, it is a polymer of nucleotides, ma'am.
The polymer of nucleotides. Can you complete your answer? Polymer of nucleotides, just like a protein. What is the definition of protein?
No, ma'am.
Double stranded.
No, let me give me the answer for how do you define?
Audio is not clear.
Somebody is playing some music there, so just stop. I think my audio will be very clear. Now is it clear? Can you proceed? Just give me some answers so that you proceed.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Define a protein or define a DNA, whatever you want to do, you can do it, please. How do you define a protein, by the way? What's a protein, please? You're going for the exam. It's the polymer of?
Polymer of nucleotides, ma'am. The
Amino
double
acids,
stranded.
ma'am.
Shanmuga Pandian?
Yes, ma'am.
Connectivity is going on and off. I'm just losing the connectivity. So, is it the paid version we are using, or it is a free version that you're using it?
Voice not audible, ma'am. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. The connectivity is very bad. Is it the paid version we are using, or is it the free version?
Free version, ma'am.
Ma'am, it's audible now.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
So, do you
ma'am.
want me to proceed, or tomorrow shall I have the class when the connectivity is better? I want your opinion only. If I'm audible, if you want me to proceed, please answer, please.
Ma'am, it's audible now, ma'am. You can continue.
Okay. So now, what is this chromosome? I mean, what was the definition for protein? Protein or
It's a
DNA?
polymer
How
of
do you want
amino
to
acid.
define that? That's protein. Okay, very good. Polymer of amino acid. Only that much, or you want to add something? How is the polymer form? You keep individual amino acids, it becomes a polymer.
Link for
I have some 10 amino acids.
Link.
Yeah, you're right. I'm getting the answer. Linked by, you told me the answer.
Peptide bond.
Linked by peptide bond. Similarly, how do you want to define a chromosome? I mean DNA. Somebody told me the answer. What's the definition for a DNA?
Polymer of nucleotide
DNA is a
linked by
DNA is a polymer of
Polymer of
nucleotides connected by phosphodiester bond.
what is the linkage?
phosphodiester bond, ma'am.
Okay, so there in protein it was your peptide bond. Here the bond is the phosphodiester bond. Now you told me different terminologies. You gave me DNA, you gave me chromosome, you gave me chromatin fiber. Now what is all this? Is it the same or is it different, or you need to understand what individually each one of them is. And then I have put on the screen, I have something called as genes. So where do we fit in all this terminology? What's all this? So DNA now we have recognized it's something, it's a polymer, it's a phosphates which is linked together by phosphodiester bond. So we are clear. Now what is all this? See my class, I want only you to answer. So unless you're going to answer, I cannot proceed. I'm not the person to put on the slides and talk to myself. It's going to be very, very difficult. That's the case. So I need. Can we proceed? What is it? Is it? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So. You told chromosomes and genes. So what is all this about? I'm asking you people, please go ahead. At least tell me what is it? Is it interrelated? Is it linked? Or is it something discrete terms that you don't understand? So let us get to know.
Condensed
Ma'am, is
forms
it,
of
ma'am, but நீங்க பேசுறது சரியா புரியல.
என்னம்மா?
அதாவது விட்டு விட்டு கேக்குது மேம்.
நான் வேற என்ன பண்றதுன்னு எனக்கே தெரியல. வேற இப்ப கேக்குதா?
மேம் இப்ப கேக்குது மேம். ஆனா வந்து கேள்வி கேக்குறப்ப நடுவுல வந்து ஸ்டாப் ஆயிடுது மேம். அதனால வந்து கேள்வி சரியா புரிய மாட்டேங்குது மேம். क्वेश्चन சரியா புரிய மாட்டேங்குது. Hello, ma'am.
Now is it clear?
Ma'am, இல்ல ma'am. இப்ப கூட clear ஆ கேக்குது.
So what to do?
some echo, ma'am.
My voice is audible. I'm getting it. Is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what is all this different terminology that we are talking about now?
Some echo, ma'am.
Bhayangara echo. I don't know why.
Excuse me, ma'am. Can I give a suggestion, ma'am? Ma'am, can you try like
What is it?
logging in after you log out, try logging in again, ma'am. Like exit, leave the meeting and join again, ma'am.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do that. Okay. So can we proceed now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
You can
ma'am.
proceed. The screen is also visible, ma'am.
Okay. So we were talking of some terms as you are defined. DNA is a polymer of DNTPs which are linked together by the phosphodiester bonds. And now we have some additional information regarding something is called as a chromosome. Somebody told me chromatin fiber. Somebody told me there is a gene. So now what is all this? So before going into the topic proper, so let me give some history. There was this person who was Thomas Morgan, who is the founder of modern genetics. So he was the person who showed that the chromosomes once contain the genes. And we have Avery, who in 1944 demonstrated that DNA is the genetic material. And Chargaff was the one who elicited the base pairing rules. And so we had some 10 to 12 scientists who have been awarded Nobel Prize for the discovery of DNA, and based on all their findings, ultimately James Watson and Francis Crick in the year 1953, they were able to deduce the double helical structure of DNA. So this is how the DNA was discovered. It was not by a single person, okay? There was a series of demonstrations and illustrations which ultimately led to the final structure of DNA. Now this DNA, we know it contains genetic information. The genetic information is supposed to be coded along the entire length. And you all have defined the DNA as a polymeric molecule. Yes, so the genetic information is also coded along this entire length of the polymeric molecule. And you would be surprised to know how many amino acids are there to make a protein?
20.
20. Okay, so you have different permutations and combinations for a protein because your genetic information is just coded with the help of 4 types of monomeric units. Okay, only 4 DNTPs. Okay, so they are the deoxyadenosine triphosphate, deoxyguanosine triphosphate, deoxycytidine triphosphate, and I have written as thymidine triphosphate. Why have I missed a D there?
Thymine is only found in DNA. It's not found in RNA.
Okay, for the simple reason we understand that the base thymine is only found in the DNA, so it's exclusive for DNA. So it only contains a deoxy sugar. So you need not mention that there. That's why I made it as TTP. Okay. Now they are all nucleoside phosphates. Okay. So these nucleoside triphosphates are negatively charged at physiological pH. Can you tell me why? What is the
They have
charge
a phosphate.
contributed by?
They have a
They have a
phosphate group
phosphate
there,
group.
so it's negatively
Okay, so
charged.
the phosphate gives the DNA the negative charge. So as far as the genetic information is concerned, now what is the other nucleic acid that you find?
Uridine.
Nucleic acids are 2 in number. One is DNA, the other one is
RNA.
RNA.
what is RNA. Now, why the genetic information is only in the DNA and not in the RNA?
Because it's
Stability,
more
ma'am.
stable.
Oh God. Why DNA is stable, ma?
It doesn't have that hydroxyl group, the 2' carbon, so it makes it more stable.
Hydroxyl group. Why? What hydroxyl group? Only because of that it's stable? You mean to say the deoxy sugar?
Yes, ma'am.
It's a double stranded structure. DNA is a double stranded structure itself.
Okay, so is that the reason, do you think? Okay, so you'll get an answer for this. I'll just keep proceeding with the basic. So what is this nucleotide? What are the bases that you find in the nucleotides?
Adenine, guanine.
And guanine, cytosine, and
Now, Okay. So what are they? Adenine and guanine comes under which classification?
Purine.
It's there on the screen. Yeah, they are purine bases. So what are the permanent bases that you find in DNA?
Cytosine and thymine.
Cytosine and thymine.
Cytosine and thymine. Okay. Now in RNA, what is the base that you find instead of thymine?
Uracil.
Uracil. Very good. So these are the 4 bases. So just remember, the genetic information is going to be coded just by these 4 DNTPs alone. Okay. And you have so much of information being stored there. So going on to what is a nucleoside and what is a nucleotide, you are going to tell me, and I've just put a picture. What is a nucleoside?
Sugar and the base, ma'am.
How do you define a nucleoside? What is this? Oh, this is the base, this is the sugar. So once the base is actually sugar, you call that as a
Nucleoside.
So what is the sugar?
Ribose,
Yeah,
ma'am.
this is the
because
side only.
first
What
one
is the
a
sugar? Okay, what is sugar?
Ribose, ma'am.
Yeah, what is this here on the right hand side? I'm
This-
just pointing my mouse there.
Deoxyribose, ma'am.
Okay, so in the second position or the 2' position of the sugar, you can see the hydroxyl group is replaced by hydrogen in case of DNA, whereas in RNA, it is the hydroxyl group that would be retained. So this is a ribose sugar, this is a deoxyribose sugar, right? So this is the nucleoside. Does it become a nucleotide? What do you add on?
You phosphorylate it, ma'am.
What is added here? Okay, so
A phosphate.
if you add a phosphate to the base and the sugar, it becomes a nucleotide. Okay, so just to revise your basics. So here the bases, the monophosphates that you find in your RNA and in your DNA. Okay, so adenosine monophosphate is found in DNA.
RNA.
This particular nucleotide, RNA. Here, this particular nucleotide, DAMP.
DNA.
UP.
UMP is RNA.
RNA.
Okay, is it exclusive for RNA or it is shared between DNA and RNA?
Exclusive for RNA.
Exclusive for RNA, ma'am.
TMP?
Exclusive for
DNA.
DNA.
Exclusive for DNA. So now we are having understood the basis. So as you all told me, the difference between DNA and RNA, one is your sugar. The ribose sugar is in RNA. Here you find the deoxyribose sugar in DNA. And as the bases are concerned, uracil is exclusive for RNA and thymine is exclusive for DNA. And as you had all defined, what is this DNA? What was the definition that you gave me?
A polymer of nucleotide with phosphodiester bonds linked to that.
Okay. So by the phosphor, these are the phosphodiester. Between the 3' hydroxyl group of the previous sugar and the 5' hydroxyl of the next sugar. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the phosphodiester bond, and please remember this phosphodiester bond has a polarity. The 5' end is to the left and the 3' end is to the right. Okay. So the 5' end, it's a 5' phosphodiester linkage, and the special property of this linkage is just like your ion is highly stable. If this bond were to break on its own, what you call as hydrolysis, if it has to undergo hydrolysis on its own, The half-life that is estimated is supposed to be 200 million years. And that's why you find DNA is the most stable. Somebody gave me an answer.
Ma'am, it's not audible right now, ma'am.
Now it's audible? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So for the simple reason that this phosphodiester bond being highly stable, it doesn't if it has to undergo hydrolysis spontaneously, the estimated half-life is supposed to be 200 million years. And because of this, we find that DNA is the most stable material, and that's why it can take inhibition. And if you get RNA, it's the most stable material because it's easily degraded by your RNases. Okay, and that's why we do not prefer RNA to be.
Ma'am, it became unaudible again.
So that's what I told you. So DNA, the most stable material. That's there. Now, what is this gene? There's some other terminology we have come across called as genes, chromatin fibers, chromosomes. Okay, so this genetic information is supposed to be organized into some structures which are called as genes, which serve as the fundamental units of genetic information. Okay, the information, if it needs to be useful, it is organized into a particular domain, just like a protein. A functional protein is supposed to have a domain. Similarly, DNA to be used. Now, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Now you're audible, ma'am.
Okay. So this genetic material is organized into genes, which are supposed to be the fundamental units of genetic information. Okay. And please remember, all the cells in your body have the same amount of genetic information. That's the terminology, the constancy of amount. If the DNA is the same in every cell of the human body. Question: why DNA is localized in the nucleus? Why not somewhere else? Can I get an answer for this?
So that it doesn't
Yes,
degrade
ma'am.
by
Why
any
DNA is
enzymes, ma'am.
localized? Okay, so we'll take this as a topic for discussion. So when with the next class, we will first finish up this particular query. You're going to get me points saying why DNA has to be placed only in the nucleus and not anywhere else in the cell. We know every cellular organelle has a function to do, and why this DNA has to be placed inside the nucleus and not anywhere else. Okay. So now we have understood why DNA can be the only genetic information. Why not RNA? We have dealt with. And now I want you to discuss on the possibility why it has to be located only in the nucleus and not in the cytosol. This particular information I want you all to collect, and we will discuss this in the next session. Okay. So proceeding. This is the central dogma. What do you mean by central dogma in biology? the information, the genetic information, the transmission of genetic information which is stored in the DNA is passed on to RNA. In turn, it is passed on to the protein to be made a useful signal. Okay, so this particular genetic information which is stored in the DNA is passed on to a useful product, which is the protein, and this transmission of genetic information from DNA to protein is called as the central dogma of molecular biology. See, this is one circuit. From DNA to protein is one circuit, but this circuit would end with the lifespan of the organism. But we find that the DNA goes on from one generation to another. There is the transmission of information, or the genetic information is passed on from one generation to the next, and that is made feasible only because of this particular point, which is the replication of DNA. So the replication of the DNA helps transmit the genetic information from one generation to the other, whereas in a particular organism, the genetic information which is stored in the DNA is passed successively to RNA and to be made into a useful protein, which is the central dogma of molecular biology. So the process wherein DNA or the genetic information is passed from one generation to the other takes place by means of replication with aid of special enzymes. Similarly, the genetic information which is in the DNA is passed on via the RNA to a protein, and this process of transmission of genetic information from DNA would be termed as transcription, and the process whereby the information in the RNA is made into a useful protein is termed as translation. Okay, so whatever is there in the RNA is being translated to a useful product, which is the protein, which is in turn carrying out its functions. Going on to the properties of DNA. DNA, as you all told me, how many strands are there in a particular DNA?
2 strands.
2 strands, double-stranded helix.
Double-stranded. Okay, so I'm not going into all those properties which you know. It is a double-stranded helical structure, polarity, Chargaff's rule. All that I'm not dealing with. Whatever you know. So we know it's a double-stranded structure, and this double-strandedness is maintained at a particular temperature and pH. Okay, or the salt conditions. That's what you told. So whenever the temperature is made to increase, what happens is the strands have the ability to separate. At higher temperatures, the double-stranded DNA has the ability to separate. And this particular separation of the double-stranded DNA is termed as denaturation. And this is supposed to take place at higher temperatures. Okay. Now, similarly, when you lower down the temperature and the pH is made appropriate, or the salt conditions are made appropriate, when you place two complementary strands of DNA, they have the ability to renature. Okay, so under appropriate conditions, if there is a temperature, there is amicable temperature, and you have two complementary strands of DNA at an appropriate pH, then both the strands have the ability to renature, which process is called as annealing. Not only that, this DNA has got a peculiar property. Now I have a single-stranded DNA. Now I can artificially create a complementary strand. Okay, if I have a complementary strand, then even this complementary artificially created strand can go and anneal to the original DNA. So this property is being used in your molecular genetics, wherein you are able to identify disorders. This is mainly applicable for your diagnostics. Your identification of polymorphisms or your mutations are aided because of this particular property of hybridization. DNA can either hybridize with a complementary DNA molecule, or it can hybridize with the RNA molecule. This hybridization is nothing but, you understand, the property of DNA is whenever it finds a complementary strand, it has the ability to go and base pair. Okay, so that is being aided. You create an artificial complementary strand and you allow it in the presence of an appropriate temperature and pH. If the strand is totally complementary, it has the ability to go on and heal. If not, it does not unheal. and this forms the basis of identification of mutations or polymorphisms, which in turn help us diagnose certain genetic disorders. Okay, so these are the properties which you need to keep in mind in addition to all the other properties. I'm not going to detail all those that you have already learned. So these are the additional properties that you pay attention to. Now, based on the helices, whether it is a right-handed helix or a left-handed helix, and based on the number of base pairs for a particular length, we have different types of DNA. One is the bDNA, the other one is the aDNA and the zDNA. These are the predominant forms, though you may find some more. But why I just wanted to address this is there was a question on this in the last week's exam. So the bDNA is the one that we commonly encounter. This has the right-handed helix, okay? And the difference between bDNA and aDNA is the humidification varies. At a higher humidity, the bDNA forms. When the humidity is lower, we get the formation of the aDNA. In contrast, the zDNA, normally it is a right-handed helix, whereas in zDNA, the helix is a left-handed one. So that's a predominant difference with the zDNA. And you do find all these DNA in the human cell. The roles probably in regulation of gene expression, we come across all these different forms of DNA. Okay, so these are the different types of DNA that do occur in a cell, and each of them have their functions, but the predominant DNA in a cell is always that of the bDNA. So these are the structures that you can see. So the pyrimidine and the purine nucleosides, just for an example. Okay, now coming on to the states of DNA. The DNA can be relaxed, or it can exist in a supercoiled state, or still there can be negative supercoils. Okay, and we have certain enzymes which can cause topological changes in DNA, and these enzymes which cause topological changes are called the topoisomerases. These topoisomerases can either relax a coiled DNA or they can also insert a supercoil. That's a specialty of these topoisomerases. So the states can be likened to a telephonic coil that you have seen. I think probably nowadays we don't have the landlines. So previously, when the landline was there, you had a cord and it used to get coiled like this. So this is the normal coil that you are able to visualize. Okay, and these are the supercoils. These topoisomerases have the ability to relax a DNA like this, or still they can also create a supercoil. So that's the ability of these topoisomerases. So this is the relaxed state of the DNA. So this is a positive supercoil. When it is twisted onto the left, you call it as a negative supercoil. Okay, so this is the right supercoil and untwisted loop. So these are the different states a DNA can exist. And topoisomerases can either relax a supercoil or still they can insert a supercoil to a relaxed DNA. So these are these enzymes. Now we have some other enzymes which are called as nucleases. As the name implies, they are going to digest your nucleotides. That's a simple definition for a nuclease. But they are further classified into three types. You have the endonucleases, you have the restriction endonucleases, and the exonucleases. Let us finish off endo and exo. What do you mean by endonuclease? What does the term endo mean?
Within.
Within. Okay. So here it is going to digest the phosphodiester bonds which are within the DNA or in the DNA, in the midst of a DNA. Whereas exonuclease?
Terminal.
Exonuclease?
From an end.
Okay,
Cut
from an
at
end.
Terminal part of the
end.
DNA, ma'am.
Okay, either from the 3' end or 5' end. If it is a 3' end cleaving enzyme, you call that as a 3' exonuclease. If it's a 5' cleaving enzyme, then you call it as a 5' exonuclease. So from the end, it can start digesting. That is an exonuclease. If it is going to go and cut the DNA in between, you call that as an endonuclease. Now, what is this restriction endonuclease?
It is specific to a fragment.
Okay, so they can cleave only when there is a particular sequence. You call that as a palindrome. Okay, a palindrome is nothing but, see, English palindrome, you say, madam, you read it either from right to left or left to right, it remains the same. Here, the polarity matters. Whether you read the sequences from 5' to 3' or from 3' to 5', the sequence remains the same. So that forms a palindromic sequence. And these enzymes cleave a particular DNA molecule only when there is a particular palindromic sequence. So based on that, we have some 50 to 9, many enzymes are there recently being discovered, which is being made use of for all your diagnostic work. So you call them as the molecular scissors. I think we'll be doing this in your recombinant DNA technology in detail. But here, just to emphasize, we have some enzymes which are called as the restriction endonucleases, which are going to cleave the DNA when there is a presence of a particular palindromic sequence. So going on to the structure of human double-stranded DNA, just like protein, there are also 4 levels of organization. Can you give me the primary structure for a protein?
The
Linear
specific
sequence of
order
amino
in
acids.
which the amino acids are
Primary
arranged.
structure of a protein. Can you be louder?
The linear order in which the
How do you
amino
define
acids are
primary?
arranged.
Can there be a better definition? You're right, but அது வந்து கொஞ்சம் vague-ஆ இருக்கு. Can I get a proper definition for the primary structure?
Sequential arrangement of amino
The
acids. ma'am.
number and sequence of amino acids, both are important. Not only the number, not only the sequence, both are important. So you term it as the number and sequence of amino acids in a protein will be given the terminology primary structure. Similarly, can you give me the primary structure for DNA? What's the primary structure for DNA? Instead of amino acids, what are you going to replace?
Nucleotides.
Nucleotides.
That's all. So it gives you the number and the sequence of nucleotides in the DNA molecule. So this polarity from 3' to 5'. So that's what you're going to add on. Now, what is the secondary and tertiary structure for a protein? If you can compare and contrast, I think things will be easier. What is the secondary structure of a protein?
Helical
Double-stranded
structure,
helix.
ma'am.
The helix.
Inama?
Helical structure, ma'am.
What are the types of secondary? What are the types of secondary structures?
Helical and beta sheets, ma'am.
Beta.
Alpha helix. So you forgot even that terminology. It's alpha helix and beta pleated sheets.
Helix and beta pleated sheet.
Okay. So it's alpha helix and beta pleated sheets. By the way, what do they tell you?
The relation
Specialized?
between nearby amino acids, like the particular order.
So the relation between the amino acids, which are a few numbers apart. Okay, that's what we can say. In the same chain, a few places apart, we have some amino acids. So between the first amino acid and the fourth amino acid, between the second amino acid and the fifth amino acid. So whatever that relation, that would be called as the secondary structure. What is the tertiary structure?
Gives the spatial arrangement.
Only that much?
A, B,
That
and Z
means to
DNA.
say,
Highly coiled, ma'am.
Interaction between
yeah, talking about a protein. Don't get confused. Let us finish the protein and then go to DNA. Still in the protein part. What do you mean by tertiary structure in a protein? What is the relationship?
Functional domain.
Okay, so here, the difference between secondary and tertiary would be secondary gives the relationship between amino acids which are few places apart. Whereas in tertiary, we get the relation between one amino acid, say in the first place, the other amino acid will be somewhere in the 250th place. Okay, and they can be coming in close relation because of the organization of folding of the protein in such a way that it gets organized into functional domains. Okay. So the relationship between amino acids which are very far apart is accounted by the tertiary structure, whereas the amino acids which are close together at a few places away the relationship is given by the secondary structure. So similarly, when you come on to DNA, okay, we know that there are double-stranded helices in a single DNA. So there is a single DNA, the duplex is made up of. So if you look at the number of base pairs, it is somewhere between 48 million to 240 million base pairs. Okay, so the chromosomes are supposed to have DNA duplex, which in turn has this many base pairs, 48 million to 240 million base pairs. And the length is around 1.6 to 8.2 centimeters for a single chromosome. Okay, so just going on to the secondary structure, the relationship between the base pairs which are nearby or which are a few distance apart, that would be giving you the secondary structure. The tertiary structure would be the relationship of one base pair with the base pair. You can see it's 48 millions. Okay, so which is very far away, located very far away. There can still be a relation. And how does this happen is what we are going to see now. Okay, so now we have seen the chromosome, which is the highest level of organization for a DNA. This chromosome is in turn made up of a constituent fiber which is called as the chromatin. The chromatin is in turn made up of a very long double-stranded DNA. Just the DNA alone doesn't make a chromatin. Okay, because you know it's a negative. What is the charge of the DNA?
Negatively.
Negatively charged.
Negatively charged, ma'am.
Like coil, do you think the coil will remain there?
No, ma'am. Due to it will repel.
Why? Okay, so there is the charge repulsion. Okay, so to evade the charge repulsion, what happens? How it is made? How it is condensed?
You put histones on which are positively charged. Lysine and
Okay, so you
arginine.
put something which is positively charged. So instead of repelling, they go and attach to the positive charge. So that positive charge is enabled by means of proteins which are termed as histones. We have not only the proteins which are histones, but also there are the presence of these non-histone proteins and small amount of RNA. All these are present, which are able to wind this long DNA duplex into the chromatin fiber, and this chromatin fiber is again wound, condensed to form the chromosome. Okay, so we'll see the non-histone proteins. Histones we'll get into detail. Let's see what are these non-histone proteins. The non-histone proteins means the enzymes. We know the DNA replication requires enzymes. DNA repair requires enzymes. RNA synthesis also takes place inside the nucleus, so that also requires enzymes. Not only that, the RNA that comes out is going to be a primary transcript. It is not functionally mature, so you need to process that. That also requires enzymes. And lastly, the mature RNA cannot stay in the nucleus. There is no function for the mature RNA inside the nucleus, so it has to be transported to the cytosol. So you need proteins in either in the form of enzymes or proteins as such, which help the genetic information which is stored in the DNA to reach your cytosol, wherein protein synthesis has to take place. Not only that, also enzymes are required to pass the genetic information from one generation to the other. So the proteins, which in the form of can be in the form of either enzymes or transcription factors, or it can be still a pore. A nuclear pore is required to transport the molecules from the nucleus into the cytosol. So all these proteins come under the group of non-histone proteins, and they are also present along with your condensed DNA. Going on to the histone protein, which help in condensing your DNA, we have 5 types of histones. It is H1, H2A, H2B, H3, and H4. There are 5 types of histones. Now, what are these histones?
Proteins, positively charged.
You told me something.
They are proteins.
You gave me an
Help
answer.
in condense.
Okay, positive. What is the special?
Basic
They are
amino.
positively charged.
Lysine and arginine.
Yeah.
So,
Rich in.
okay, positively charged. Now, what should be present there? What confers the positive charge to the protein?
Negative charge, ma'am.
Basic amino acids.
Basic amino acids like lysine, and arginine.
Can you name the amino acids which confer positive charge?
Lysine and
Lysine and
arginine.
arginine.
Okay, so they're called as the major basic proteins. So the basic amino acids arginine and lysine are present in abundance. I think now you can appreciate the negatively charged DNA has the ability to form a bond with these positively charged proteins, and that's how the condensation process begins. Okay, so initially we have this histone octamer forming. The H1 histone is called as a linker molecule. So there is an octamer which is formed, 2 units of H2A, H2B, H3 and H4. They form an octamer around which 1.75 turns of DNA, you can see here, the 1.75 turns of DNA.
The screen is invisible now, but we are able to hear you.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. You're audible, ma'am.
Audible, ma'am.
Okay, so we have this histone octamer which is formed 2 units of each of H2A, H2B, H3 and H4. This core histone octamer is wound by 1.75 turns of your DNA, that is your double-stranded helical molecule, and these two ends are linked with the help of this H1 histone. H1 histone is called as the linker molecule. Okay, this unit as such, the histone octamer with 1.75 turns wound DNA along with the H1 histone constitute a structure which is called as the nucleosome. Okay, so here you can appreciate this is the secondary structure of DNA. The primary is your double-stranded helix, which gives the relationship between, or which gives you the number and the sequence of nucleotides. The secondary structure is, it gives you the relation between base pairs which are a few spaces apart, wherein the condensation process of DNA has started with the help of these histone proteins, okay, which are 5 types: H1, H2A, H2B, H3 and H4. H2A, H2B, H3 and H4 form the octamer around which we have winding of 1.75 turns of DNA, and the ends are linked with this linker histone which is your H1. So this entire unit of octamer along with the DNA along with H1 forms a molecule which is called as the nucleosome, and this nucleosome is the secondary structure of DNA. Hope I am clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now proceeding further to the tertiary structure, and just one more property of histones I would like to tell you here. Now, I think all of you are aware, if the DNA, you think genetic information can be passed from DNA to RNA, is it possible?
What was the question, ma'am?
I'm asking you people. See, if the DNA is packed like this, it is wound around the histone molecule, it is tightly packed. If the DNA is like this, do you think the genetic information from DNA can be passed to RNA? What is the process of passing DNA from DNA to RNA? The genetic information from DNA to RNA?
Transcription, ma'am. Ma'am, so it has to be acetylated, ma'am.
Transcription.
It has to be acetylated so that it is.
So no, see, let us not go on describing the terms. Just tell me, is it possible for the process of transcription to take place in such a wound state?
No, ma'am.
It has to
So what has to happen for the DNA? What should happen?
Uncoiling of the DNA, ma'am.
Uncoiling, or we can say it has to undergo a relaxed state so that the strands should separate. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So there's some mechanism. Body, the cell has got certain mechanisms wherein if you want to have a particular gene which is located here, if it has to be transcribed, then in this particular form of nucleosome, the transcription factors can never access the DNA because it is cut. Okay, so you have to get it to relaxed mode. Then you have to go for denaturation. Then only the transcription proteins can access the base pairs, and then only the genetic information can be passed on. Right? So now, what was the DNA acted to histone? I'm really sorry for the poor connectivity. Okay. So now, how is this DNA attached to the histone? Or because of what there is this condensation happening?
Opposite charges.
Am I audible?
Polarities, ma'am.
Okay, opposite charges. Okay. So polarity in சொல்ல முடியாது. It's because of the charge, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Polarity here in the DNA, it means to say the difference, the strands running in different directions. That's a polarity word that is being, the terminology into DNA, it applies that way. Okay. So here it is because of the charge, opposite charges. The histone is what charge?
Positively charged.
Histone carries what charge and DNA carries what charge?
Positive.
DNA
positively
Okay,
charged.
histones are positively
DNA negative,
charged, your
histone
DNA is
positive.
negatively charged, so it is kept. Okay, so it is kept stable. Now, if you want to, if the DNA has to undergo relaxation for transcription, now what do you think should happen? How are you going to relax this tight structure? You have a H1
using
histone which is
topoisomerase.
linking the two ends. You have an octamer around. Topoisomerase, what's the function, ma?
It will add or remove
You can
supercoiling.
either relax this. But here there's no supercoiling. There's only
You have to
twisting.
separate the
Twisting
charges.
of DNA around.
Relax.
Okay. How do you relax? It's a question. See, now you have this histone which is tightly binding to your DNA. What do you want to do there?
The octamers should be separated.
How will the histone leave the DNA? What is the mechanism by which you can separate histone from DNA?
Covalent modifications. Ma'am.
See, if there is a monkey which is attracted to a banana and it is having your purse, so if it is having your purse, if you want to take the purse from the monkey, what do you want to give?
The banana.
Banana. So here, what are you going to do? The monkey is your histone, which is holding on to your purse, which is your DNA. What's the
Negative charge.
Give more negative charge.
So you offer some other negative charge. So what you do is acetylate the histones so that instead of binding to the DNA, it will bind to the acetate groups. Thereby, the DNA will get relaxed and is easily added for the transcription factor. So this is one mechanism, and this is called as a covalent modification. So histones can undergo 6 types of covalent modification. One is your acetylation, the other one is phosphorylation, one more is sumoylation, one more is ADP ribosylation, phosphorylation. Okay, so there are, I'm not naming everything. So these histones have the ability to, okay, it is made possible because of this process of covalent modification, and they become highly essential if your DNA is to transform the genetic information to successive molecules like your RNA, from where the genetic information has to reach the protein. So if it were to happen, then histone release or the DNA should be released from histones to our because the covalent modification. Okay, so this is one concept. Histones undergo covalent modification. What is the secondary structure of DNA made up of, ma? What is one called as? Just now we saw
Nucleosome.
Nucleosome.
nucleosomes. Now what happens? You have successive nucleosomes coming together, so you find the DNA is getting condensed further. Okay, so we have the nucleosomes coming together, nucleosomes, and this layering of nucleosomes would be called as the 10 nanometer fibril, because the width is around 10 nanometer. So this is the next higher level of organization. From the double-stranded helical structure, it's your nucleosome. Now the level of condensation from nucleosome happens to the 10 nanometer fibril. The nucleosomes are brought closer together. Now this 10 nanometer fibril, okay, so this 10 nanometer fibril goes condenses further to form the 30 nanometer chromatin fiber, okay. Now this 30 nanometer chromatin fiber condenses to form one loop, and you can see the number of base pairs here is 75 kilo base pairs. So this is one loop. So 6 such loops can form together one rosette, and 30 such rosettes form one coil, and some 10 coils together form one chromatid. Okay, so these chromatids together form this chromosome. So you can see from a double-stranded helical structure, which is your DNA, it is condensed to about 8,000 to 10,000 times to form a chromosome. So the different levels of organization being, primarily it gives you the number and sequence of base pairs which occurs in your double-stranded helix, successively condensed to form the nucleosome, which is a secondary structure. Okay, the nucleosomes come together to form the 10 nanometer fibril. The condensation of this 10 nanometer fibril successively results in the formation of this 30 nanometer fibril, which is your tertiary structure. They are all different levels of tertiary structure till the chromosome. Okay, so this gives you the tertiary structure, the successive 10 nanometer fibrils from 30 nanometer, condensation of 30 nanometer fibril, which is called as the chromatin fiber, happens to form one loop, which is supposed to have 75 kilo base pairs. Now 6 such loops condense to form your rosette, okay, which 6 loops form one rosette, and 30 rosettes together form one coil, and 10 coils form one chromosome. So this is how your DNA is condensed. So from the level of double helices till the chromosome, if you can understand the magnitude of condensation, it is something around 8,000 to 10,000 times the double-stranded helices are condensed. So these are the primary, secondary, and tertiary levels of organization for your DNA molecule. So this is again the same depiction. Here you can see the double-stranded helix, which is your primary structure. Here you get on the secondary structure, which is your nucleosomes. So the beads on string appearance. So 3 nucleosomes together form your 10 nanometer fibril. Then successive condensation of the 10 nanometer fibril forms your 30 nanometer chromatin fiber. So successively, that is what we have seen the different terminologies there. Okay, so the successive condensation results in the formation of the chromosomes. So this is the highest level of organization for a DNA, from where we have started with a double-stranded helix to a nucleosome, to a 10 nanometer fibril, to a 30 nanometer fibril, to a loop, rosette, coil, and then ultimately we have your chromosome. Going on to the quaternary structure, can you define what a quaternary structure for a protein is?
The relation between different polypeptides of a protein.
Excellent. It's the same thing here. The relationship between the adjacent strands of DNA. Okay. So it's very, very simple. So quaternary structure gives you the relationship between the polypeptide chains. Okay. So can you name a protein in the quaternary state and can you name a protein in the tertiary state? For you to get a better
Hemoglobin and
understanding.
myoglobin.
Okay. So hemoglobin is a protein in which state?
Quaternary.
Quaternary.
Tertiary?
Myoglobin.
Myoglobin.
Myoglobin. Okay, so myoglobin has just got, okay. Now can I give a statement? All proteins are in the tertiary state. It's a true statement of all proteins tertiary state. Is it a true statement or a false statement?
True statement.
Why do you say it's true? They exist only in the tertiary state?
Secondary state is also possible. Primary is also possible. Other states are also possible.
Functional protein. Sorry. All functional proteins exist in the tertiary state only, right? I'm asking you people.
Not audible, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Now it is audible. Ma'am.
Yeah, my question was, all functional proteins exist only in the tertiary state. Is it right or wrong?
Wrong, ma'am.
Okay. So we can have proteins either in the tertiary state, which is completely functional, or we can have proteins in the quaternary state also, which are functional. So just like protein, here also in your DNA molecule, the quaternary structure is that which defines the relationship between the adjacent strands. Okay, so the adjacent strands, we understand that there is a complementary base pair. See Chargaff's rule. Kindly share me the Chargaff's rule. It is there shortly. It's the, see, this is the Chargaff's rule.
Adenine pass with thymine.
In the morning, I'm not able to hear. Can you please be louder?
Adenine always pairs with thymine. Guanine always pairs with cytosine. The amount of purine is equal to the amount of pyrimidine.
Good. Okay.
Adenine paired with thymine have 2 hydrogen bonds. Guanine paired with cytosine have 3 hydrogen bonds.
Yeah, proceed, ma. I just got to hear adenine pairs with thymine by 2 hydrogen bonds. Only that much I heard.
Guanine pairs with cytosine have 3 hydrogen bonds, ma'am.
Very good, very good. So you understand this is a complementary base pairing which occurs between the 2 strands of DNA. That's what we have been telling. Wherever there is a the opposite strand that has got a T, it tries to base pair. There is a hydrogen bond which is between A and T. There's a double hydrogen bonding. Now looking at these hydrogen bonds, can you tell me which structure is more stable? Is it the AT pair or GC pair?
GC pair.
GC pair. AT pair is more stable.
Okay, so I want to translate that. Suppose I want to make this DNA, which would require a low, which would require a higher temperature.
AT will require low temperature. GC will require a higher temperature to denate.
What will require higher?
GC will require higher.
I mean, okay, GC, because it has got 3 hydrogen bonds, may require a higher temperature as compared to AT. So you all agree with me, AT is easily disruptible, correct? If you want
Yes,
a
ma'am.
denature, it is easy disrupting an AT bond. You agree with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is your quaternary structure. So I have completed with the organism of DNA. Moving on to chromatin. Okay, can I complete this? Or you want me to stop here and proceed in the next session? I leave the choice to you. Organization of DNA is over, but we have to know the types of chromatin, how exchange of genetic material takes place in the chromosome. That part alone is left with, and some facts regarding your base pair numbers. What do you mean by introns? What do you mean by exons? All that information, which is the coding part, non-coding part, what is the repetitive sequence, all that is left behind. So just tell me, when should I complete the topic? Am I audible, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want me to proceed more, or should I continue in the next session? When is the next session? You can tell me. Can I get a reply for this, please?
Ma'am, we can continue in the next session, ma'am.
Okay, so just organize the next session and let me know.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'm sure, ma'am.
Did you find it? Okay, so did you find it useful, KMCNs?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if you want any improvements of, I will leave my number. I don't know where. Shanmuga Pandey has my number. You can just create a group and you can voice your concerns so that we can improve in the next sessions. So whatever it is, let me know, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Sure, ma'am.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.